Brexit. Just hearing that word was enough at one point to start an argument in Britain. Families, they argued about it, friends fell out over it. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about something people rarely like to talk about: Brexit. Welcome to the English Right Now podcast, a lesson in which we teach you at least 10 pieces of related vocabulary. We say at least 10, it's a real conversation. I'm British English teacher Roy, and joining me, as always, is my good friend Rob. Hello.
Buongiorno. Yeah.
You've got Italian again.
I thought I'd try and be, European. Bringing a few European languages.
I love it. I love it. I was gonna make a joke with what's that with it, anyway. But yeah, Brexit. So that's the topic. A lot of people keep asking me about it, and I feel that we have not necessarily. A lot of people skirt around talking about it, which means they don't, they try to avoid on some level of talking about it. I thought we'd just tackle it, get it over and done with, get this chat over and done with. But talking about Brexit, do you obviously maybe privately with your partner and so on, do you generally talk about Brexit?
No, not generally. No, sometimes it does crop up into conversation, but we don't really have a big heated debate about it like we did several years ago when Brexit really started to happen. Then everyone was talking about it, but it still crops up, doesn't it? It's a bit like, I suppose, like the war. You still mention the war occasionally, the Second World War.
Kind of Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers. Don't mention the war. Don't mention the Brexit. I think it's sometimes like an elephant in the room still. I think some people don't like to talk about it. They don't like engaging in any conversation about Brexit. And somewhat, I think attitudes have changed towards Brexit and how we feel about it. But I think in general, it's kind of a taboo topic for a lot of people. They're like, they'll kind of say, oh yeah, and they'll change the subject.
It's a sensitive topic, but it certainly divided the nation, didn't it? At one point, there were people who were, what were they? You had Brexiteers, people who wanted to leave Europe, and the Remainers, or Ramonas, as some people would call them, because they were moaning.
So there were a lot of what we call portmanteaus around Brexit. Now, before I start talking about those, I'm going to say we're going to somewhat play it safe in the sense we're not going to give our opinion on it and something like that. It's just a kind of general chit chat about Brexit, what it was, and sort of a general observation of British people. But there were a lot of portmanteaus.
I was going to say we're going to sit on the fence, so to speak.
Yeah, it turns out not a lot of people did. They went one way or the other. They were really, it was really, there was real division. It was really divided in this country. It was pretty much down the middle. And it was a pretty divided time. Divided means very split, and you can say the population was divided. But like I say, there were a lot of portmanteaus, and a portmanteau is a combination of two words to make a new word. So Brexit was British exit Brexit, and then you had, as you said, there were quite a few, but there was also, you had the leavers and the remainers. So some people voted remain, and like you say, they sort of combined Remainer with the word moan to make Ramona. It's clever. Yeah,
that's right. Yes, there are lots of other words as well. Some probably we can't broadcast about people calling each other names and things like that. But yeah, no, it was a very big thing anyway. Brexit, wasn't it? All because of that referendum that we had.
Yes. Yeah, referendum is where the.
Sorry, to say, when was it? 2016 was it? Yeah.
So we're now talking 10 years ago. 10 years since Brexit. And it's still there. It's still a topic that people talk about. Not as much. And maybe sometimes we should talk about it more, I think. But it's still there, 10 years on. And I think that's because, well, we can go into the ins and outs of it, but a referendum is a good word. It's when you basically give people the choice to vote on a big decision, like a yes or a no vote. So there was a Scottish independence referendum. And then there was the Brexit referendum, pretty much back to back. And it was simply a choice of leave or remain, wasn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave Europe or remain in Europe. And the result was quite tight, wasn't it?
Mm.
It
It
was
was like
only by a few percent.
51.8, and yeah,
Yeah,
about 1-2%.
but the
Um,
Leavers won. The Leavers won. So
the Leavers won, and we left.
we exited Britain. Oh, we exited Britain. Britain exited Europe.
Yeah, I always love it because we did this. This is something that always makes me laugh because people said we're leaving Europe, like we put some kind of motor on the island of Britain and sailed up, plowed off into the mid-Atlantic. But of course, we didn't leave Europe. We're still here geographically. It's just we
Yes,
left the customs union, the kind of European Union.
the
And as you
political
say,
system. Yeah.
it was really tight, wasn't it?
Mm. It was. So obviously it was a tight divide of yes and no, but the majority had to win. So that's what happened. And I think it surprised the Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron. I didn't
Yeah.
think he was expecting it to go that way, but
No.
you have to follow the results of a referendum. That's the law. And so exit we did, but it took a very long
Yeah.
time, of course. Yeah.
I often think that the words like Brexit, I think they come to pass sometimes as well because they're really, really catchy. Like Brexit sounds better than Remain in terms of a linguistic point of view. I think Brexit's a bit catchier. So I think Brexit gets stuck in your head because some people said Remain, as in Britain Remain. It just doesn't sound as exciting, does it?
No,
And
the language is
Ramona.
quite key. Yeah. Yeah. Go on. Ramona. Yeah.
Ramona is such a, if oh mate, you're such a Ramona. There
Yeah.
wasn't the alternative, was there? As far as I can remember.
No, that's
Nobody
right.
went a believer, and people were like, yeah, I'm a believer. That was just sounding quite positive, and sort of things like this. It wasn't, yeah. Where were
But
you
I
when
think,
the decision? Oh,
where was I? Also, where was I? Very good question. Probably watching TV, waiting for the result to come out.
yeah. I was. Did you know it was going to happen? Did you feel it in your gut? Did you
No,
have a gut feeling?
no, I didn't. I didn't think it would be like that. I thought it might be tight, but I thought a majority of people would want to stay with Europe. As the expression goes, we're better together. Being a
Yeah,
united Europe is better for security and defense and feeling part of something bigger. But obviously, I think a lot of people felt, what was the word, disillusioned with what they were getting
yeah,
from Europe, being part of Europe. They felt, also, some politicians were sort of encouraging people to leave because we'd be better off.
yeah,
We wouldn't have to follow the rules of Brussels. We'd be, independent. We could make our own decisions and spend money on
yeah.
what we wanted to spend it on. That's basically the argument.
Just a yes or no question. Do you feel better off 10 years later?
Are we allowed to get political? No, but I
I'm
don't
just asking
know.
financially. Do you feel better
Yeah,
off?
never.
No, I don't. I don't. And I was in a pub in Cambridge,
Mm,
the night before, and I remember saying to someone that um I could feel it was coming. I felt for a while. I felt in my gut that it was going to be a leave vote, because it was just too. A lot of these political figures were very compelling, and you didn't see that kind of same like passion and even drive, in my opinion. You
mm.
didn't see the momentum behind the Remain campaign that you saw behind the Leave campaign.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was tied strongly to nationalism, again, sort of
Mm,
flag waving. This, if you're British, you want to leave, this kind of idea again. And
yes.
I remember I felt it was coming. And the morning after, I went to teach. Had a lot of students, lovely students. And the next morning, I remember I put it up on the board just because I wanted to check. I was like, and it was the currency exchange, and basically the pound had gone down, weakened against every currency except for one. I can't remember what that currency was, but the
Okay.
pound had just crashed, and I
Mm.
think it was some like kind of remote African currency that had also gone down further. And I said to my students, I was like, "What do you think of that?" And they said, "Shopping, shopping." And I was like, "Yeah." Because now their currency is worth more in the UK, just
Oh,
finally
yes.
overnight. And they all
Yeah.
kept saying shopping. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. At
As
least
all,
somebody's.
as always, there are winners and losers, aren't there?
Mm,
So I mean, some people were campaigning because they wanted independence and to make our own rules, but then I say the Remainers, who perhaps weren't so vocal, were saying,
Yeah.
we're better off together because, we can share resources and all that kind of stuff. My only thought about this is, obviously, because the UK is an island, we've always been a little bit independent from the rest of
Yeah.
what we call mainland Europe. So we always had a little bit of an independent spirit. We haven't joined the Euro before, have we?
Yeah.
And
No.
things like that. And so there is that sort of inkling maybe in people's heads that, we're a bit special
Yeah.
because we're separate from mainland Europe.
Well, like you say, we didn't go full in anyway. And some people would say we had quite a good deal in hindsight because we kept our own currency. A lot of things that we got to keep, and also, you're right. We've always been a bit different. We've got our own kind of measurement system. We use centimeters, but we also use inches and feet, and then weight. We use pounds and stone, and we use pints that are bigger than American pints, and all this kind of stuff. Miles rather than kilometers. So we've always been a bit, we like to do things differently, I think.
But the
right.
anti-European people were putting out stories like, because we're a part of Europe, we have to sell straight bananas and things like that. Can't, all these kind of stories about things we couldn't do because we were stuck in Europe. That was one side of the argument.
Yeah, and you use the word as well, campaign. To campaign is where you basically go out and you sort of go to meetings and hold audiences with people to talk about your political views and things like this. But, looking quite objectively, stepping back, I think the argument of if we change things will be better is stronger than stick with the same. Because if you're not happy, sticking with the same is not the choice. Whereas, change is, grass is always greener, isn't it? That kind of idea.
Yeah.
If you are not happy, change looks more attractive. And I think, I look back in 2016, 2015, and probably financially I was a little bit better off. Put it that way. But I remember at the time people weren't happy. There was always an issue with something. And for some, I think some people labeled it a protest vote. And a protest vote is where basically you are using your vote to say, not that they wanted to leave, but they wanted to say, I don't like the current government and what they stand for. And they were standing for Remain. So it's an interesting.
The other expression is be careful what you wish for. You might wish for all these amazing changes, but sometimes they could be worse. You could be worse off, but there you go.
There was a lot of misinformation going round, and misinformation is where it's wrong. The information is wrong, but it's a mistake. And there was also disinformation, it seemed, which is dishonest information deliberately designed to trick people. So I'm not going to say which is which, but there was a lot of that kind of floating round. But I think a lot of people looked at life and thought, life isn't where I want it to be right now. Why is my life not like this? And some people were saying, well, it's the EU.
Yeah.
And I think that's not an exclusively British thing. If you're not happy with something, you look for a reason. And if somebody's pointing, okay. So there was a lot of that at the time, wasn't there?
Yeah, you look for something to blame, don't you? And in this case, it was kind of, being part of the EU is dragging us down. We could
People
be so
were
much
talking about
better.
money, weren't they?
Yeah,
money around him. We could spend that money on the NHS. There was a bus. Did you ever see that bus?
I never saw it. I saw it on TV, of course, but a big red bus, didn't it? That said how many millions of pounds we'd save, we could put into our health system if we came out of.
I never saw it. Never saw
saw
it. But it was like this mythical. I don't know, like a dragon, wasn't it? Flying around the country, promising better. And since we voted for Brexit, the 51% or the slight majority voted to leave the EU in 2016, and we finally agreed to leave in 2018, I believe. That was when we left. And since then things have been different, I think, somewhat.
Well, I mean, there are certain different restrictions now, aren't there? For example, for traveling, one of the things I love doing is traveling. You're restricted how long you can stay in Europe for. Of course, we have this new system that's come in this year where you now have to give your fingerprints and have a photo of your face taken, because
Yeah.
if you're entering any of the European countries and we're not part of Europe, you're basically a foreigner. You've got
Yeah.
to be checked in. So there's those sort of things. What else has changed? Of course, for students, it's harder now, isn't it, to
Yeah.
travel and learn abroad.
Yeah.
Um,
We can't just uproot anymore and go and live in Spain or
No.
France as easily, which is, or anywhere across the EU. I'm not just picking those two countries.
No.
Not about to surprise my wife and say, "Darling, we're off. Pack your bags. We're going to go and live in the south of France." Although I would, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, but before after then, I think a lot of people, we spent years talking about negotiating a trade deal. And a trade deal is an agreement between two countries, which often includes savings and different kind of incentives, basically for trade. And we seem to go on about that for years, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, that's an important part of our economy, though, isn't it? Trading with people. And of course,
Yeah.
when you're in Europe, you could trade easily because you're within this block. But because you're coming out of the club, in a way, I suppose, you've then got to negotiate a way of dealing with other people, and the long negotiations with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and and then I don't think we had any negotiators many negotiators, because before that, the EU negotiated trade agreements for us. So suddenly we had to find skilled people to go in. Did they call you? Or
Sadly not. No, they would have been fine if they had. Yeah.
Yeah,
of course, we had
we'd
to
have had a trade deal in minutes.
we had to find other countries to trade with and make friends with other countries who who want to trade with us, because we didn't have this guaranteed trading agreement with Europe.
Yeah, and you could argue that while we were in the European Union or the bloc, it was the ECC, I think, before that. We'd somewhat neglected previous relationships, so we had to kind of go back, like an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend going, "Hi, God, we have some history. Do you want to trade with us again?" So yeah, and it's weird, and of course, I think some people, people say Brexit was about immigration. I think there was a lot of some people were. It was immigration for them. Some others it was financial. Others it was just protest. So it wasn't just a one, because I think a lot of people say if you voted for Brexit, voted to leave, immigration was your main thing. And I don't think it was the same. It wasn't for everybody. It wasn't the same issue, was it?
No, it wasn't. Although immigration was a big part of it, I think, for certain people, wasn't it? And we were getting a lot of people coming across from Europe on the boats, weren't we, to the UK?
Wow.
Yeah, not a ferry.
Yeah,
I'm talking about illegal immigrants.
Ferries. Okay, yeah. Because if we're going to go on small boats, that's the thing,
Yeah,
that's the current one, isn't it? So people weren't happy, voted for Brexit because they thought life would get better. People are not happy now, and it seems to be the small boats are the current trending issue that people are kind of oh no, it must be those people on boats. I'm not getting political, but small boats as well. There were some small boats coming across. If anybody doesn't know what small boats are, it's basically full of illegal immigration, potentially refugees and people like this. It's people not coming through traditional migration channels, immigration channels, and they're kind of getting on boats and just sailing across. It's really treacherous, that crossing.
Busiest waterway in the world, isn't it? The English Channel, and they were crossing
dangerous.
there, in a little inflatable boat. They paid lots of money to do it, and they travelled all the way from a sort of war-torn country or somewhere where they're in jeopardy, travelled through Europe, got to France, then paid lots of money to get in a small little boat to sail across this really busy shipping lane to come to the UK, I guess, for a better life. And that was starting to happen, I guess, around Brexit. So that was one of the issues.
Yeah, well,
that hasn't gone away, as I say.
No, so this is the interesting dichotomy that people don't like to talk about. Before Brexit, we did have a few small boats. Of course, it started in there. But after Brexit, we left the Dublin 3 agreement. I think it's called the Dublin 3 agreement, which effectively meant we can put refugees back to point of origin. So they could go back to, but now, of course, because we're no longer in the EU, we are the point of origin, basically, or point of arrival. So yeah, that kind of indirectly created a new crisis. And of course, France and working with the EU, it was more motivated to kind of control borders, like control the crossings. Now, not so much. So yeah, that's an indirect thing. But that was also things, control of the borders. That was a big one, wasn't it?
Yes, take back control. That's right. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So, but it bled, a couple of words we need to say. It was very polarizing, which means people were very much yes or no. And still today, there are polarizing kind of opinions. But Brexit seems to have changed. I mean, it's out of the kind of populist agenda. So populist politics is where, there's kind of, trying to be popular, basically, by getting on the current bandwagon. Usually saying things like common sense, and yeah, that seems to be the dog whistle of anyway. But yeah, so
that said, I mean, the current government are trying to kind of be friends again with Europe, aren't they? And trying to sort out certain agreements where we can, have similar.
Other day, I think I think the other day we had our first official invitation back into the EU, I think, by the European Green Party. I don't know if it was the first, but I saw it the other day with the 10-year anniversary coming up. On May the 8th, I think it was, which is the day we had the local election polls. But so same day, and they sort of said, "Oh, come back."
So do you think we will go back? Do you think it will we go full circle?
Oh, you see, it's without getting too political. I think we had it really good. we had a good deal. We had, and the question would be, what would we have to lose this time to go back in? Because the last thing the EU would want is for us to be like doing the okey cokey. Got it. Left foot in, left foot out, in, out, in, out. So they would, realistically, it would have to be locked down. So, and all this kind of talk of sovereignty. So I don't know. I think if we could get exactly the same deal, with maybe a clause that we weren't allowed to leave for 50 years, or 20 years, or something, that we had to stay in for a while, and then we'll reevaluate in 20 years' time or 50 years' time. I think the vast majority of people would be, I would be down. I would go for that, and I think a lot of people would, which is why I'm going to bring you on some stats. What about you? Do you think we'd go back?
I don't think we'd ever have the same deal again.
It's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah. We may, right. I mean, it's an interesting time at the moment, obviously, for national security or global security.
Yeah.
We're together in NATO, but in terms of a kind of European political, we might be persuaded to all come together again to sort of for security, that sort of thing. But
almost like we're stronger together, isn't it? So let me give you a few stats. So as of 2025, 56% of people felt that Brexit was the wrong idea, was a bad idea. I think it's 58 this year, so we seem to be going up 2%, whereas 31% feel it was still the right idea. So it seems now the majority is starting to think, 56% of people polled thought it was a terrible idea. How does that make you feel now? Do you think that's...
Yeah, maybe we should have a referendum tomorrow, should we? And see.
People don't talk about it as much. So I wonder if they've gone quiet because they're starting to,
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier about how careful what you wish for. So maybe people are starting to realize, I was so desperate for change and I voted leave, and now,
But it is interesting, of the people polled that were original leave voters, at least still 2/3, around 68% of them, still think that it was the right idea.
Okay.
So the leave voters, well, they've changed somewhat, because it would be 100% if they hadn't changed. But it's interesting, 58% people think it was the wrong decision, 31% the right decision, which leaves about 13% that they're still, I don't know. I think, it's interesting that it's starting to swing that way. And like I say, I believe this year it's 58%. So it's growing. The people that
Yeah.
believe it was the wrong decision.
It's a
Who
gradual
do you
thing.
think?
It's not a huge swing, is it? But it's, I suppose, gradually going that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically, a lot of people, 61% of people, I don't think this is a surprise, 61% of people say they think Brexit has been more of a failure than a success. So
Okay.
61% of 1,414 Britons think it was a mistake, and think it was a failure. Do you think that's in line with sort of the opinions you hear around you? Not saying anybody.
No. Well, again, I don't hear many opinions at the moment. That's the thing. It's
Yeah,
very quiet, isn't it? But my hunch would tell me that maybe is about right, because
yeah.
people have experienced this period of Brexit not going as well as they thought. And given a second chance, maybe they would get back into Europe again. But as I say, there are those core people who made their mind up. They're not going to change.
Yeah.
We're better out of the European Union, and we're in charge of our own destiny. And I don't think you're going to convince those people any differently.
No. And so 61% people think that Brexit was more of a failure than a success. Who do they blame for that? Which political party do you think they blame for the failure?
Oh, that's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who do they blame? The current government?
No, they blame the Conservatives. So 88,
Okay. Yeah.
I think this is 88%, say that they are very or somewhat responsible, the Conservative Party, which makes sense because they were
Yeah,
in power, and they were in power right up until a few years ago.
that's very true.
So it makes sense up until 2024.
And the referendum was under their leadership, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm going to give you some stats in a minute, but who do you think is the number one person they blame for the failure of Brexit?
David Cameron?
No, he's not even on the list.
Oh, Boris Johnson.
Yes, Boris Johnson, who is, I suppose he was the one that's saying Brexit means Brexit. And he was doing a lot of campaigning.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was out there, and of course he kind of led us for quite some time, but he wasn't there. He kind of disappeared after Brexit for a little while. He kind of went a bit quieter and then came back into the fold a little bit later on. But people seemingly blame him the most. Who do you think is the second most blamed person? I'm only going to do the top three.
Second, Nigel Farage.
Yes. Well, you're very good at this. So Boris Johnson, 84% of people. A lot lower. Nigel Farage.
Farage.
Yes. I always call him Farage and rhyme with garage, but never mind. He's 67%, which I think is a lot. Is it quite low? Who do you think is the third?
Oh. So you say not David Cameron on the list?
No, he's not on the list at all.
Don't know. Margaret Thatcher.
Some of those are in. Yeah, no, not quite. Well, some people say she was the new Margaret Thatcher. Theresa May.
Oh yes, of course. Yes.
So you have Theresa May on 66. Then it goes to Rishi Sunak on 64. At 39% of people blaming someone, the Labour Party. They weren't even in. They weren't even in.
No, they didn't fight hard, I don't think, to remain, though, did they? Because they were a bit divided.
Oh, is that the reason?
Yeah, they weren't. I think it was only the Liberal Democrats who were actually campaigning to actually stay in Europe, whereas Labour are a bit more on the fence. Yeah.
And then 37% of people blame the European Union.
It's more their fault.
I love there is one on this list that cracks me up, but 30% blame the UK civil service, and 28% of people blame, who do you think?
Themselves.
No. More people blame Keir Starmer than they blame themselves. What did Keir Starmer have to do with it? He wasn't even
around then, was he?
The leader, was he? What did he have to do with it? God blimey, he gets blamed for everything, that man. But there you go. So that's the stats on the door. And and then there's a lot of people saying they would strongly support 22% of people say strongly support a close relationship with the European Union. 36% of people strongly support rejoining the EU. And it's really, really fascinating. A lot of people strongly oppose further loosening of ties, which I think is a good sign. But before we finish today, only 25% of people say we should definitely have a referendum in the next 5 years. And then 28%, 10 years, and 36% in the next 25 years. So you might be right. On the horizon at some point, we'll have a referendum, but not today.
No, not. I don't think it's going to change perhaps in our lifetime, but a new generation of people might. Yeah.
Because there was an age skew. Let's not, dance around that. But yeah, I'll never forget the eternal words. I think it might have been Boris Johnson who said Brexit means Brexit. And I always thought I could teach English like that and just say, well, table means table.
Yes.
But anyway, that's getting another level. But there you go. So, we talked about Brexit. If you do have any questions or your own opinions, let us know in the comments below. And please do remember to support this podcast by buying a cup of tea for myself or for Rob. We might need one after this. But Rob, I just want to say, everybody, I want to say thank you very much for listening to us today. And Robert, thank you for chatting about such a almost taboo subject.
Well, yeah, it was certainly controversial in its day, wasn't it? It
still feels
a big thing.
Still feels it. But yeah, so that was the topic of today. And thank you very much, Rob. I'll see you in the next one.
You will. Ciao.
You started with a buongiorno. I'm going to go arrivederci.
Goodbye, Europe.
Formal goodbye. See you later, Rob.
Bye.